Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the original 1933 King Kong film. Now, this is a movie that's been one of my greatest sort of blind spots when it comes to old school horror adventure type movies. It's a movie that I've always kind of, I don't know, been kind of hesitant to watch because I thought it wouldn't hold up. I really grew up with the Peter Jackson version, and that one has such great CGI that I thought maybe with the stop motion and stuff, it was gonna look very primitive. And when I actually sat down to watch it, I was very impressed, and I have lots of thoughts. So let's get right into it. Let's review King Kong. So I think the first thing that really stands out about this movie is that the story and drama elements to the film really do not hold up. I don't know if they were ever that seen as that good, but they're really kind of just stupid, very basic and vanilla and bland and boring, and we don't care about these characters very much. But none of that really matters, right? I mean, it's setting up the scenario, and there's some interesting things, I guess, that you can take from those elements of the plot. And I do like Faye Ray, and I think she gives a great performance. But the movie really picks up once Kong enters the picture, and we really get some great special effects work. Now, this was done painstakingly in stop motion and using all sort of like rear screen projections and sort of mixing the live action with the stop motion, and it really works very well, in my opinion. Of course, nowadays, audiences that are just trying to sort of get lost in the imagery, maybe they're not going to appreciate the movie as much, but as someone who can really understand and appreciate the hard work and craftsmanship on display, I think that this stuff works really well and it looks awesome. King Kong really looks great, and there's some really cool effects work being done, especially in the fight sequences. And the action is really well done and really captivating, and you really do like get sucked into it and you kind of suspend your disbelief as far as these sort of aged effects, because this sort of old school puppet stop motion stuff, it doesn't really look as great anymore in the age of sort of CGI that not that CGI looks good, but it has more of a realistic kind of look, more of an uncanny valley look where no one would really ever actually think this is a real ape on the loose. And so I can understand maybe audiences back then, they would have that an easier time suspending the disbelief. So I can't even imagine the sort of groundbreaking revelation that this movie was in 1933. But even here in 2026, I'm really just sort of astounded at the sort of work that they were able to do and the effort that they were putting into this film to make it look so grand and have such a epic spectacle during the Great Depression. I think that's really a captivating thing to think about and to watch. And I think this is a movie that, when you really look at some of the other movies that were coming out in the 1930s, this is one of the most groundbreaking American films of its era. And I think it's definitely one that really does deserve its status that it gets from a lot of sort of historians and fans of the genre, is they really do love this original King Kong. And I definitely feel kind of dumb for having sort of thought, like, kind of dismissing the movie, and I'm glad I finally decided to go and watch it because it's absolutely an amazing movie in my opinion, despite all the problems. And that's the thing. A lot of times with sort of horror movies or like genre films, if you don't care about the characters, it's tough to really get into anything that's going on. But the only character you really need to care about is King Kong, and you do care about Kong a lot. And you really are like, that puppet has a great performance, and you really do feel like everything that he's feeling, and you really have a lot of sympathy for him. And I think Faye Ray gives a really good performance as the sort of original Scream Queen. She really, first of all, she looks absolutely amazing, and I think that kind of helps us to understand where Kong is coming from. And then the performance that she has interacting with Kong is really interesting. And then Kong's reaction to her and Kong's sort of obsession with her really does kind of feel in line with like the old school philosophy to monster movies, right? You have this sort of thing that's viewed as an other, as a monster, as something that's really terrifying and scary, but really it's just falling in love with a beautiful woman, which is such a common occurrence for humans, and that sort of humanity is what makes us care for it, and then we feel bad when the humans ultimately destroy it because of his obsession with the woman. So I really think this is really an interesting movie, one that is in line with a lot of old school monster movies, but is a much bigger spectacle than a lot of those types of movies. So this really does feel like the sort of prototypical American summer blockbuster type movie that we would start to see a lot more of in like the 70s and 80s with people like Steven Spielberg, people who grew up with this sort of movie. Obviously, you have Ray Harryhausen, who had a lot of great effects work that he was inspired by King Kong. But I think in general, the sort of whole ethos of American blockbuster filmmaking, you can kind of trace back to King Kong. I mean, there's other movies as well that really helped to set that up, but I do think that Kong is owed a lot of the due for that sort of style of filmmaking. So maybe you don't like the sort of big spectacle kind of American filmmaking, but I really do enjoy that as well as I enjoy sort of lower budget art house things from Europe. I think, America's really good at in its filmmaking sphere doing that sort of big, sort of ambitious spectacle type filmmaking, and I can really appreciate the craftsmanship to deliver something like that during the Great Depression and have it have such an iconic sort of power and great imagery that we can still watch it nowadays and enjoy, and it's really still so impactful and powerful, and it has had obviously a huge lasting legacy, not only in its inspiration for other movies, but its own sort of sequels and remakes. And obviously, Peter Jackson's King Kong is what I grew up with, and so now I can kind of see a lot of the sort of early versions of a lot of the stuff I saw when I was a kid, so that was cool to see. A lot of the fight sequences were a lot more elaborate with Jackson, but I think they were really well done here. And so I do think that King Kong is worth tracking down and watching the original version. And maybe I'll have to watch some of these sequels now because I really am kind of hooked on the premise and on the effects work and everything. So yes, King Kong 1933, it's worthy of all the love and adoration it gets. It's absolutely a masterpiece. It's definitely one now that I'll be watching a lot more frequently, and I definitely feel kind of dumb for dismissing it earlier on. So if you're like me and you were someone that was kind of dismissive of it because you thought maybe the effects work wasn't going to hold up, I would definitely recommend giving King Kong a shot. So that's all I really have to say for today. Thank you all for watching my video.